क्या हुआ?
कोई बात नहीं, कोई बात नहीं, मैं बीच में
It's true. My daddy couldn't see the rain coming, nor could we. Now we are all drenched and waiting for it to stop, trying to remember the sun and watching as the clouds slowly pass. This summer when I visited her, she was recovering. I spent hours in her lap as she rubbed my bald head and I rubbed hers, thinking about the difference between the sea and the sky, thinking about the difference between my daddy and I. I drive from the airport to 166 Subhash Nagar, Udaipur, and I run up to the Chat to check everything has remained the same. The light, the rust, the water, the mandir, the pandit whose eyes linger for a second too long, and the feeling of acute loneliness when your uncle makes you stand at the top of the hills wanting a photo of you with the view. Almost overnight, I go from sertraline to homeopathy khao beti, from depression to kisi ne nazar lagaya hogi, from dating a girl to nahi koi ladka nahi mila abhi tak. I haven't found a man. Suddenly, time collapses, and I am unchanged. I am 6 years ago. 6 years ago is now. Suddenly, my present becomes a memory, and my future is to remember. Suddenly, time is everywhere in my daddy's house. In this Danish biscuit tin with sewing needles and threads inside. In the Chinese checkers boards that let light seep through. In the Vibhuti dabba, and in my dada's medicine box, with his Parkinson-ridden handwritten labels on them. Old calendars and adverts hang off rusty nails, ornamenting the walls with images of different deities. Time is distorted in my dadi's house. Her house is filled with things she refuses to replace. I find these 20-year-old newspapers by the foot of my bed. Rama, my daddy kept them because you can't throw away God, she says. Time is not something we grasp objectively, but can only experience. These things she has made, vernacular objects made beautiful by her hands, these objects that hold time within them, representing the presence of her hope in difficult times. To me, there is God in these objects that hold time. I too am one of her objects. I too hold time. As a proponent of hybrid hyphenations, I find significance in highlighting the incommensurable elements, the stubborn chunks, as the very essence of cultural identifications. My focus revolves around the performative nature of differential identities, skillfully navigating and negotiating spaces that continually and contingently unfold, reshape boundaries, and lay bare the limitations of any claim to a singular autonomous sign of difference, whether rooted in class, gender, or race. In my perspective, these allocations of social differences, where difference transcends a binary and exists in between, derive their agency from a vision of the future, where the past is not originary and the present is more than transitory. To stretch a point, I embody an interstitial future that emerges in the space between the claims of the past and the needs of the present.
मधुच मे सद्धिश्च मे सपीतिश्च मे कृषिश्च मे वृष्टिश्च मे चैत्रञ्च मे औद्भित्यञ्च मे रयिश्च मे रायश्च मे पुष्टञ्च मे पुष्टिश्च मे विभुच मे प्रभुच मे बहुच मे भूयश्च मे पूर्णञ्च मे पूर्णतः
I found this book in my Dadi's house on Sai Baba. It told me that you can say of Brahman, not this, but you can never surely say it is this. The supreme Brahman is eternal, true and infinite. That supreme reality is beyond the ken of verbal expression. It told me to think of life like a long garland of flowers, where one end is birth and the other is death. When we look at the ends of the garland, it will be quite clear that these ends are only relevant to the body and not the jiva inside the body. Be aware, avoid the cycle of birth and death. It told me of how the day dissolves into night, and when the night disappears, one can see the following day. The gentle dawn fades to give rise to the heat of noon, but then soon wanes to be the mellow dusk. Men may come and men may go, but I go on forever, says time, beamingly. Time moves on. Nothing is permanent. And Sai Baba says,
don't fear death, don't believe this world, transient Lokani, never forget God, Devani, one needs to remain in the present and move on.
Agnischama indraschame somaschama indraschame savitachama indraschame saraswati.
it is psychotic to draw a line between two places. It is psychotic to go. It is psychotic to look. It is psychotic to live in a different country forever. It is psychotic to lose something forever. The compelling convictions that something has been lost is psychotic. Even the aeroplane's dotted lines as it descends to Heathrow is a purely weird ambient energy. It is psychotic to submit to violence in a time of great violence. And yet it is psychotic to leave that home or country, the place where you submitted again and again forever. Indeed, it makes the subsequent voluntary arrival a stressor for psychosis.